Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be talking about the top 15 most findable errors. Basically, there's all of these coins that people say, this is crazy valuable, it's worth $100,000. Well, a lot of these are pretty findable, but others of them, they're maybe not as expensive. And so I want to talk about the types of coins that you can be encouraged by when you're roll hunting or when you're going through coins, looking at them, you may be able to find these types of errors a little bit more easily than the super expensive stuff. So all of these sold for below $100, but I'm going to quickly talk you through them. And the first is going to be a weak strike. This sold for $30. Effectively, what happened here is that different types of pressure is used to strike coins. It's kind of obvious. And so often there's something called like a die adjustment and trial strike when they're trying to perfect the, how hard the coins are struck so that they get properly struck up, not too much force with the dies. But in this example, it's not quite that. It's more, and it could be kind of a late stage of that, but basically there just is not a ton of pressure applied to the coin during the striking process. The mint calibration was a little bit off, and it's not anything that's that crazy, but it's interesting because this coin is AU, but it looks very, very worn. And so it's a sort of thing that, worth $30, not bad, though I would think that the grading price probably ended up being more than $30, so not a great idea to grade it, but something interesting for collection. Another type of coin is a broad struck one. This is a broad struck Susan B. Anthony dollar, and so the way these are produced is that the coins are not struck within retaining collars that kind of hold in the coin. As it gets struck, it's struck with a lot of force so that it doesn't spread out. And so sometimes there's like off-center strikes, which we'll talk about very shortly, but a broad struck is like an off-center strike, except none of the coin is actually off-center. So it just expands beyond the rim of what it normally should, and in this case, it's clearly expanded kind of from, call it 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Here is an off-center strike, basically same thing as the broad strike where the retaining collars do not properly hold the coin in, except in this example, this coin also was a little bit out of the dies that strike it, where part of the planchet got cut off. So the planchet was about 5% outside of where the dies were striking, and as a result there's some expansion. You can see in the date it's spread out. It hasn't properly had the regular metal flow, and it only sold for $36, but there's lots of dramatic off-center coins, but this one is maybe more likely to have slipped through for a while in change and clearly circulated quite a bit. Here we've got a double curved clip planchet. There's different types of planchet clips, but basically blank planchets that are then struck are punched out of like a large strip of flat metal. And so, there's many, it's like a large copper sheet, and then they punch it with circular punches. And so in this example, somehow one of the planchets didn't properly, flow through and immediately get ejected from the strip. And instead, and it's not like one coin is punched at a time or one planchet is punched at a time, it's like many. And so you can see at the same time there would have been, after this was punched out, it received another one of these stamps where there was one circle, you can imagine like a semicircle or a part of a circle striking on, cutting out planchets on this side and on this side. And so it got that treatment. $37, it's a little bit better than a regular clip. And there's different types of clips. This one is a defective planchet, and so not all planchets hold up that well. Sometimes there's metal impurities, and in this example, it's punched out, but it's not like it's a clip down here. It's just like the metal was not formed well in that sheet that then gets punched planchets out of. So in this case, only $41, but that you can see that mess up in the planchet. And again, that metal flow is the result where it's very difficult for the relief in the E pluribus unum to be struck up well. But it's a pretty minor defective planchet, and so this is the sort of thing that can also escape and kind of get into circulation or just beyond the watchful eye of a mint. There are some defective planchets that are more valuable and way more severe. Here we have a tapered planchet, and that's when the planchet thins out significantly at one end of a these planchet strips, and so it's been rolled much thinner. You can see it almost is significantly thinner on this end of everything, and was lightly lighter, like slightly lighter. That wasn't the best description. But basically, it wasn't so, sometimes you could have tapering that would start much further into the coin. This one's a little bit more minor, but it's a very nice example of tapering on a planchet. Here we have a split before strike Lincoln cent, and basically it is a very advanced defective planchet where the defections are so bad that it basically splits open. And so in this example, the already struck planchet ends up splitting open and then gets struck. It's pretty normal on this side. Here you can see a lot of the impurities, and there would be a counterpart to this that was also struck up. Because it's so much thinner of a planchet, it also was struggled to absorb and has this issue with how well the coin is struck up. Outside devices much weaker, and I'm not exactly sure why the inside ones are tougher there as well. Actually, I guess it's in the reverse impression of where Lincoln would have been struck up, but again, lots of metal flow issues. Here, this is also it was NGC graded. They can go raw for a lot less than this, but $43, a bow tie clip blank. So basically the coins are getting punched out. So you could imagine all 3 or 4 parts of this are getting punched out at the same time. So that's how that double clip was made earlier. And you could tell that this was from a nickel. If you fit 4 nickels, they would perfectly, be able to fit all the semicircles. This is a clamshell lamination, very difficult to tell what this is from this photo, but basically similar to a clam. This would almost have opened up, so it's like a split planchet, but it's been retained, it's like a clam. So you can imagine on this side, the planchet is flat, and then there's some part that's flat on this end, and then the other opens slightly. And so there would be a very small, maybe, 20-degree angle where this reverse is lifting up and it's splitting apart like a clam would. Here is a split after strike. So in this example, the coin was split. There's those underlying defectiveness in the planchet, and then it falls away. You can tell, I guess, this has been, lightly struck on this side, but really, and it's fascinating to see kind of the little curved and curled metal, but this is almost perfect because it didn't split apart where you'd have those metal flow issues before the strike. And yeah, if you ever see a one-sided coin, it could be, and you can see the interesting kind of texture, but this one circulated for a little while as well. Here we have a classic one. These can be found, any mint product can have some errors. This is a struck through debris. If you look closely, you'll see on this side anything that comes between the die that strikes the coin and the planchet that gets struck often can fall away. Sometimes it's retained. Those are a little more valuable. But there was some type of debris that would have been right here, and it is no longer there. It didn't sell for that much, but an interesting error for sure. And that can be found on really any coin. And then here we see an obverse lamination. And why am I not seeing it? Maybe it's some kind of a lamination on her cheek there, but really anything that could cause a little bit of the planchet to flake off, a smaller, lighter metal impurity that then flakes, and the lamination can be retained or it can fall away. I would not recommend pulling a lamination off if you have a coin with a nice lamination error. Here, again, we have a defective planchet on a Lincoln cent, slightly more severe, but this is not a suggestion to go carve out your existing Lincoln cents, but just as a reminder that this is a little bit more, and you can probably tell, to have that kind of damage in the coin made at the mint, there's details that flow into the coin, whereas it would be obvious if you went and sheared a penny to make it worth $50. It would be a much different integration and texture of the planchet before receiving a strike versus one that's already been struck and somebody carves out. And so that's a big theme there, but it's also interesting. Often when you have some kind of defection here or clip planchet, you can have effects kind of at 180 degrees on the other side of the coin, again, because of those metal flows. And you can see that a little bit on the rim on this coin. Here we've got a straight clip, a little bit more obvious, but again, you can't take pliers and shear a coin in half and make it more valuable. This would have been I believe on the edge of one of the planchet strips, and but that didn't really, anyways, there can be certain circumstances in which you see the clip be straight. There's also like jagged, and there's elliptical, and there's a couple different types of clips, but this is definitely an inspiring one that is going to be more attainable. I guess these are also good kind of inspiration for errors that you can purchase that are a little bit less expensive if you're doing a collection. And the final one is a classic, and there's some more valuable ones depending on which item it is. Some of the newer ones it's a lot tougher to find, but having a clad layer missing. So a lot of the modern coins are struck in copper nickel, and they have like a core copper clad layer and then a nickel layer on the outside. And so sometimes part of that copper, part of the clad outside layer, the nickel, is not found for whatever reason, and a bunch of coins then get struck where it's almost like a sandwich, except you forget bread on one of the sides, and so you can reveal the inner copper core. And really interesting coin. Hopefully these were interesting kind of 15 highlights. I guess we had defective planchet technically twice, is that right? But also different levels, and so a lot of similar themes throughout, but there's a bunch of errors, and I feel like I also owe one not to talk about $500,000 errors all the time, but show some attainable coins that you can add to your collection or look for. Makes the hobby so much more fun when you aren't worried about getting the most expensive stuff, just collecting interesting coins that speak to you. Look forward to seeing you in some upcoming videos. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to head on over to treasuretown.com and sign up for our email list to stay up to date on everything that's happening, whether it's auction updates, exciting new inventory drops, coin collecting news, or general informational resources. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on another one.